I would say one of the main characters that I play is Ebenezer Balfour, who, when you first meet him, he's this very fickle man. He's very isolated from the rest of society. It turns out he's Davy's uncle. Start the play, we see him very lonely, very greedy, penny pincher. He's raising the rents of the estate that he owns. He's
deeply unhappy.
Deeply unhappy.
Deeply unhappy man.
And besides that, yeah, I play pirates, I play Highlanders, I play people from the borders, here, there, and everywhere.
And I play Frances Stevenson, who was Robert Louis Stevenson's wife. Frances serves as a kind of a narrator and an overseer of the piece. Occasional, very slight puppet master, which links through to real Frances. She and Robert Louis Stevenson used to write at the same table and write at the same desk, and they would literally lean over and make corrections, spelling, syntax, but also say, well, that won't work because you haven't said who that person is. And he would do the same for her writing because she was a well-published author as well. So it's almost like she's a narrator and she links the different things together, and her story mirrors the story of Alan Breck Stewart and Davy Balfour. They kind of work in parallel. They're not the same, but they work beautifully in tandem. I always joke and I say I lean on things, do moody walking and sing at people. And that's, but I do sing to people. They can't hear me, they can't see me, but I kind of sing them through things sometimes. And it's the same as you play them through things and you walk with them on their journey. Sometimes I'm in a scene but don't do anything. She's like a little presence running through. It's lovely. It's lovely the way they found a way to make that work in the melee of everything else.
I play a pirate called Two-Legged Barry, who's the complete opposite. He's just this very happy sort of fella who, you know, just loves being where he is. He works for Hosey's, one of the pirates.
And it's very difficult, I think, for people who play multiple roles. You don't have time to build your story. You have to come in with the story 100%. First foot on the stage, because otherwise it's unclear. If you're only on for a short space of time with that character, you don't have the luxury of a through thread. I have the luxury of the same person all the way through, but it's quite disjointed. I have to make sure that each appearance of Frances has its own arc, so it has its own journey, and then you also have multiples of those for the whole thing. So I have to make sure that each arc has its own journey, but the whole thing also has a through thread and its own journey. And she's fascinating. And I've never worked like this before.
No, absolutely.
I don't think any of us, well, apart from people who had done Pride and Prejudice, sort of, which is another sort of collaborative piece. I'd never had a rehearsal where everything had to go the same. Sometimes the dancers will go off and do one thing, and the musicians will go off and do another thing, and the actors who don't sing will be in another room. But this was all of us rehearsing all of it all the time, and it was fascinating though. I mean, all of us did the fight call. We had a big fight day, didn't we? Where everybody was learning to handle pistols and swords and throw themselves on the floor. And of course, Frances just stands there in a corset, leaning on things, and doesn't fight at all, or get involved with any of that. But we all did the call.
But that's kind of, again, as an ensemble piece, that's why it feels like
and it's really important.
We're all in it together. Yeah, doing all that early on, I think, has made us as a cast stronger. And I think once that foundation's built, then that's also, you can see it in the work that we can lean on each other, help each other, trust each other when...
That relaxed trust, when you know that you know you're going to be in the right place, and you trust implicitly that someone else is going to be there. I mean, almost literally to catch you when you fall. Almost literally sometimes. But you know, we all keep an eye out all the time, and sometimes you can see something that's about to happen or that has happened that's not quite where it should be. So everybody just moves around and just does the thing, and everyone's got each other's backs. It's great.
Yeah. But yeah, due to it being a very technical show, and due to us having to be so integrated in all the technical work, I think all the technical stuff was happening at the same time as all the kind of thought processes of all the characters. which, you know, you do one first and then the other. But it felt both happening at the same time, which, you know, you had to really be engaged and switched on for that. But yeah.
I think it helped in the end, though,
yeah,
because
I
it
think-
became, when something's linked from the start, it's much, much easier to keep it in your bones, rather than thinking, I know the song, but I have no idea where I'm supposed to be or which thing I'm supposed to be holding. But if you've always done it from the beginning and you've always been over there, or you've always moved that staircase on those lines, then you know that it makes it, easier is the wrong word, less stressful, more confident.
more confident in doing it, because you've...
In an ensemble piece, whether you play 1 or 24 characters, seems like 24, you're always changing in the wings. Yeah. It's an ensemble piece. We're all telling the story of Davy and Alan. So it's like a jigsaw. We're all the different pieces of the jigsaw, and we make the picture of Davy and Alan. And so we're all aware as an ensemble that your energy has to go towards that storytelling. Everyone has a moment of focus, that they're the focus of the piece. Ebenezer has that fantastic scene in the House of Shores at the beginning, which always makes me laugh. Everybody has that moment. The focus of the story is Davy and Alan. And I think that collaborative energy in an ensemble piece is what drives that.
We as the ensemble kind of build the world ourselves. We do all the set changes, we do all the musical, like, little instrumental pieces off the sides. Yeah, all of that kind of needed to be integrated so early on, and it had to be so sharp and so precise, even to the way that, like, it all feels very musical. All the dialogue feels very musical to kind of make it all fit and feels very rhythmic, I think, as a piece.
Sometimes it's so chaotic, in inverted commas, on stage. I would like everybody to know how rehearsed
all the chaos is,
organised the chaos is, and it has to be played straight. You have to play the chaos for its absolute truth. The minute you start buying into it, the stakes, that's exactly
are always there for each character.
Exactly.
No matter how ridiculous it feels on stage.
Yeah, because if you play the lunacy, it would be carnage. You have to absolutely play the truth of the lunacy, and then it's funny and clever. And TV is easy because you have an editor who cuts a camera angle and tells you where to look. But on stage, the actors, especially in an ensemble piece, have to be the editor. So if you're on stage not concentrating, then nobody's going to know where to look. But if everybody looks at one person and directs their energy selflessly to them, then everyone knows what's going on. It makes it clearer for the audience. You see Alan and Davy meeting, the first time I see him swing on and drop. I've introduced him, he swings on very valiantly on a rope. It's a very glamorous and exciting moment. And Francis knows it's going to happen, and I know it's going to happen. Francis and I both have to see it for the first time and not go, oh, here's the bit where he swings on. Because if I just give it that energy, it's not going to help. It's his moment. So I have to give it, as he swings on, that 100% concentration. And you can, as you say, you can be on a scene and not say anything. Listening and stillness are the two things that are most underrated when you're learning to be an actor. Everything for the first time. When you step onto the stage, it's the first time, even though you know what's going to happen, you have to know to the nth millimetre, because otherwise you might get hit by a bit of scenery, or you might step on something, or you might trip over a thing, or get in someone's way, or forget what you're doing. You have to focus, obviously, and concentrate, and not vague off and think, what shall I have for tea tomorrow? You have to listen. And if you listen to people as if this is the first time it's ever happened, you really can't go wrong. If you can remove yourself from a scene, and the scene can, as an actor, as in if you could go off stage and the scene would go on perfectly well without you, then your job is to do that focus thing that I was saying and point everybody's attention to the thing that's happening.
What's going on the stage,
And that's your job. Otherwise, you'd be in the wings. So you're there for a reason, but your reason is to focus on somebody else. And just listen and observe actively.
Switching characters it's been, you know, I've had multi-role shows before, but never at this pace. You know, I've had moments where I've gone from one character to another in mere seconds. But the way that it's all been done, you know, we all come on in this base costume and it's very 80s. It kind of reflects the music of the time, and it's kind of building the costume around it. Very small things like you put on a hat, you put on, you know, for Ebenezer, I just whack on a dressing gown and some slippers. And I think the costume is really helpful for me because, you know, the weight of for example, the weight of that dressing gown can help with my posture, and finding the voice in mere seconds is something I've really found interesting. I think that's just something that you have to really be on the ball for. You just have to, you know, just go, right, here I am, I'm here, fly yourself on the stage. And
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think what Izzy's done really well is kind of given this story of hope. And, you know, at the end, I think Ebenezer does reflect on what he's done and reflects on how he's taken this heartbreak and has turned it into greed and is very possessive of items as a way of replacing love almost. And at the end, he does get that redemption in the end, which I think is probably the main difference from the original source, which I think that's something that also reflects the Davy and Alan story. I think that lovely message of hope and, you know, working on not only that relationship between each other, but also themselves. You see Davy going from this naive young boy, I wouldn't even say naive, just inexperienced young boy, to who he becomes at the end. And he's very strong, and he feels he's himself really, and he's discovered himself, and it's the way it's done. It's so beautifully. Every time I see it at the end, I'm just like, oh, I can cry. Just so beautiful the way that.
I love Frances says you will come into your kingdom, and she doesn't only mean his physical kingdom of the House of Shores and his lands, but also into yourself. We all come into ourselves at different times in our lives. Some people are born ready-made and they're ready to go, and I took a long time to grow into me, to this, and to feel comfortable in my own skin and happy with what and who I am. And I think Davy starts off having no clue. He's been very insular. And Alan Brixton is the complete opposite. He's travelled the world, he lives in France, he fights with swords. Davy hasn't a clue about anything outside of his own town. And it's a tiny town. But as they go through that, as you say, he grows, but also their power, there's a bit of a power swap. At the beginning, Alan is the driving force in their relationship in its entirety and of the word. But there's a moment where they just start to swap, where Davy starts to take the driving seat. He grabs the reins slightly, and then they've got the reins together, but then Davy takes over. And in the end, he's the man, not the boy. Her first moment of vulnerability, I think, is when she talks about not being able to protect her children, when she took them to places they shouldn't see. And she says, so I learned how to shoot a gun, which she did. That's her first chink of vulnerability. But the only time she really shows her vulnerability is at the end, when she talks about when Louis died. And the only time she truly relaxes physically, which is a thing that I was able to do as a physical actor, I decided that the only time she truly lets her energy drop is at the end.
I think for Ebenezer in particular, one of the key moments for him is not just meeting Davy, but it's the emotional impact that Davy's arrived because both his parents have died, which I think is a big shift in Ebenezer, because not only has he found out about his older brother, but also his partner. And the reason that Ebenezer is so bitter is because his brother Alexander were both in love with the same woman, and she was in love with Alexander. And Ebenezer was so heartbroken by this and lost all trust And Alexander felt so bad that he gave him all of, that he gave him the House of Shaws, he gave him this massive estate, he gave him all the money just so he can run off and be in love. And I think Ebenezer took that bitterness or took that, took all these physical things and that replaced his love. And I think for him, hearing not only that his brother's passed away, but the love of his life has passed away, I think for him, it's probably the only time he has actually almost lets his guard down and then just switches it back up and he's like, nope, I need to, that's when the tactics are in, that's when I need to get this boy away. As far as Ebenezer knows, that's the one thing that's going to take away what he's built this whole time. And the one thing that he's kind of grown any form of attachment to. So I think for him, that's kind of his main switch. And from then on, it's tactic based. He realizes he's trying to figure out what to do on his feet. He's a very on his feet thinker. And then when he realizes I can get this boy away to at least get him kidnapped and possibly murdered. And of course, at the very end, when he does get caught and Davy gets all the inheritance, and I think when he has that moment at the end when that love can be placed where the love was meant to be and it isn't meant to be possessions, I think that's a moment for him as well of not only guilt, but a way of being able to open up a little bit more. So used to seeing a queer story that, whether it's on film or TV or just most media, queer stories always have a tragic ending, and it's just so refreshing to see a happy queer story.
Yes, and just a normal one. It's just normal.
And
it's a number of people have said to me, "Oh, that's been is that been put onto it because it's not in the book?" And I always want to say, when you read the book, which you can do quite easily, go back and see it with that eye, because queer stories weren't written for the wider public then. It was very minimal on straight romance and descriptively, and there's no way that it would have been allowed to be published had it been spoken. It wasn't done in the time. But if you read it with that eye, it's there. I honestly believe that it's not shoehorned, it's not applied, it's not separate and pasted on. It is there. Davy constantly talks about how much he admires Alan Breck-Stewart. He's never seen a man like him, and even though his skin, the original Alan Breck-Stewart apparently had bad skin, and he says, even though his skin was bad, he was such a viscerally attractive man, and I'd never felt this way about another man before. And it's all there. It's just they weren't allowed to say, and I really fancied him.
They kissed.
And I had a kiss. It's handled so, everything in this, the fighting, the violence, the romance, the loss, the grief, it's handled with such a delicate touch, such a thoughtful touch, that nothing seems shocking, I don't think. Nothing is shocking, and nor should it be. Nor should it be. And I think it's, as you say, it's really lovely to have a tender, positive and hopeful queer story. It's joyous.